So our second snippet for this week looks at the some of the key decisions of the Warren Court. So this is the 9 justices. Right here in the middle here is Earl Warren, who's Chief Justice, serves from 1953 until 1969. This is a liberal court. It's the most liberal court of the 20th century. It really kind of goes into two eras, from 53 to 62, and then from 62 to 69. The 62 to 69 version of the Warren Court is much more liberal. There's a reliable 5-justice, really very liberal majority during that time. From 53 to 62, it's sort of the very liberal justices and the moderate liberal justices kind of duke it out, with Warren as the key player. And obviously with the Warren Court, it's best known for its Brown decision, but there are a whole host of others. The first is the issue of school prayer, and precisely, more generally, the issue of church, state, and religious freedom in public schools. In the 1940s and 1950s, every public school child in New York had to say this prayer, which was created by the regents. And many of you have more closer dealings with the New York regents than I do, but count on the regents to come up with this kind of anodyne, bland prayer, which nonetheless is problematic, because what happens if you're an atheist? What happens if you don't acknowledge the existence of God? Can a school district have this kind of prayer? So it's challenged by a group of parents and by a group of activist organizations. And in 1962, this very important decision called Engel versus Vitale, the court says no. The court says, look, you can't have a system where the public schools are perceived as endorsing a particular religious belief. And the key passage from this is what I have here in red. It's neither sacrilegious nor anti-religious to say that each separate government in this country should stay out of the business of writing or sanctioning official prayers, and leave that purely religious function to the people themselves and to those the people choose to look after them for religious guidance. This is an extraordinarily unpopular decision. The Supreme Court is just flooded with mail as a result of this decision, and calls to overturn it will continue to resonate in U.S. politics until the 1990s, when it kind of loses a lot of its steam. But this is one of the big issues of the Warren Court: this idea of creating a wall of separation between church and state. Another is to deal with the issue of equal redistricting, which is a tricky issue. Traditionally, the court had adhered to what's known as the political question doctrine, which is that if it was a political dispute between the House and the Senate, or a dispute between the parties, or dispute between how politics operated, the court said, we don't handle these things. We have to defer. But this case out of Tennessee calls into question the doctrine. So here are the 9 House districts of Tennessee as of 1960. And you'll notice that there is just this huge population disparity between these last 3 districts. So Tennessee, it turns out, hadn't redistricted since early in the 20th century, and the population had changed dramatically in a couple of ways. First, the rural sections of the state had become less populous, and the urban section of the state, especially Memphis, had become more populous, and Memphis is a city with a significant African-American population. The Tennessee legislature didn't want to give Black voters more representation, so basically they adopted a policy of, we're just not going to redistrict at all. We'll keep the same districts every 10 years. So a group of civil rights organizations and Tennessee voters challenged this in court, and what they basically say is, look, what you've done is create a system where the voter in the 8th district really has far more influence in selecting a representative than the voter in the 9th district. And this decision is called Baker versus Carr, and the court says, yes, it's we're not going to say precisely how this should be handled, but This is not a political question. The courts can handle this. And there's a bitter dissent from Justice Frankfurter, who we encountered last time. Remember, he was a Roosevelt appointee. This is one of his last opinions on the court, where he's worried that this kind of issue, court involvement in redistricting, will create the impression that the court is sort of too involved in political activities and will tarnish the court's moral authority. The Warren Court basically says, no, we are going to get involved. And it will do so in a variety of different ways. The next big redistricting case involves this district in Atlanta and its suburbs. Just like Tennessee, what the Georgia legislature had done was to draw districts in such a way that sort of packed all kinds of voters into the Atlanta district and had rural districts that had much fewer voters. And in this case called Westbury versus Sanders, the court strikes this down. This is an extremely important redistricting case, arguably the most important, where the court links a right to vote with a right to equal representation. And the key line from Westbury versus Sanders is what I have here in red. Readers surely could have taken this to mean one person, one vote. That is, that House districts, according to this decision, basically have to have the same number of people within an individual state. So, you know, if Georgia has 5 million people and it has 10 House districts, every House district has to have 500,000 people. You can't have one that's 800,000 people and one that's 200,000 people. And then ultimately, the court will apply this to state legislative districts as well. They do allow more variation in state legislative districts. But the case is called Reynolds versus Sims. The key line is legislators represent people, not trees or acres, which is a good one. The argument had been that it's okay to do apportionment on the basis of counties. So one county would each get one vote. Court says, no, you have to try to equalize it on the basis of population. So we have church and state. We have political equality with regards to redistricting. Both of these are very controversial, and these political issues lead to a challenge from Congress, organized by this man, William Tuck, a conservative Democrat from Virginia, to pass an amendment that would strip from the Supreme Court under the Constitution. The Congress can decide what issues can be decided by the court, what issues they can't, to strip from the Supreme Court jurisdiction over reapportionment, representation, and legislative redistricting cases. This is a surprisingly popular policy, not just among segregationists, but among a lot of conservatives and a lot of rural representatives who are worried about losing their influence. There's a fear that it's going to pass the House. The question is, will it be blocked in the Senate? And Johnson is not pleased about this. There's a proposal to get the Democratic Party to formally oppose the Tuck amendment. Johnson doesn't want to do that because he doesn't want to alienate rural voters. Instead, he urges liberals to basically use, and Johnson disdained these kind of professional liberals, to use legislative procedure as a way of dealing with the problem instead, to filibuster the bill in the Senate to prevent it from coming up to a vote. These two men are Arthur Schlesinger, a liberal historian who would work for JFK, and Anthony Lewis, who was the New York Times' Supreme Court reporter, both prominent Washington liberal intellectuals. Johnson's going to mention them in the call. You can get a sense of the disdain. The one other thing that background here is that Johnson's going to mention this guy, Paul Douglas, who's a senator from Illinois. Douglas, before entering the Senate, he was elected to the Senate in 1948, was a professor at the University of Chicago. And you'll hear in this call what Johnson thinks of college professors.
Why in the living hell they want to put in the platform, notify every little state, Carl Albert's district is put together and he's abolished from Congress. Now, who wants to do that to Carl Albert when he's the best instrument the liberals have for achievement in this town since Sam Rayburn? Now, why would they want to abolish his district? And it's not so bad if the Senate abolishes or the court abolishes it. But it's awful if he is asked, the platform committee of which he heads, to abolish himself. That's just cruel, inhuman punishment. And it looks like even a goddamn college professor could understand that. Douglas has got less sense than any man I know. When judgment's required, he's always off chasing some damn balloon there.
That's right.
So,
All right.
Bill, the pitch is this. They're coming, the Congress hadn't adjourned. It was due to adjourn. It didn't adjourn. Does Dr. Douglas know that?
I hope he does.
All right. Now, why didn't they adjourn? What are they coming back for? They're coming back to consider the Tuck bill and the Dirksen bill and the Mansfield bill. Now, what they ought to do, if the liberals want a real plan of attack, and Tony Lewis wants something to do, is get 10 of them out here to Georgetown House some night with Office Fletcher and let them all agree. One of them will talk 4 hours and the other will talk 4 hours. And that's what they do best, is talk. And Mansfield won't run after 6 o'clock. They'll do that for 2 weeks and the show will be over. The Tuck bill will be dead. The Supreme Court will be riding high, and that'll be it, period. That's simple. You don't have to be smart to know that. Hell, I knew that before I left Johnson City.
You get a sense that Johnson was not patient with the liberals. This is exactly what happens. The bill is killed in this way. The Warren Court does involve itself in a challenge to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This case involved an Atlanta hotel called the Heart of Atlanta Hotel, whose owner said that it was a violation of the First Amendment to require him to rent hotel rooms to African Americans. And in a case called Heart of Atlanta Motel versus the United States, the court unanimously says no, that's not valid. They uphold the measure against constitutional challenge. So these are a few areas in which the Warren Court was active. Our next snippet is going to look at the extremely controversial cases in the court in the mid and late 60s and the political backlash to those.